Good morning. Welcome. I'm Dan Gorodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission, Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's public meeting of June 28, 2023. As per usual, we are going to begin with a number of votes before getting into several public hearings. To start, the Commission will vote on 1160 Flushing Avenue, a proposal to create hundreds of jobs in Bushwick through a mix of commercial offices, retail, and light industrial space, a sign of the North Brooklyn Industrial Business Zone's growth. Also in Brooklyn, we will vote on the Greenpoint Landing Parcel 5C2, required waterfront public access area, which would bring more than 2 acres of green waterfront open space to a previously industrial shorefront. The proposed space would include picnic areas, seating areas, and a multi-purpose lawn. Moving to Staten Island, the Commission will vote on the Warner Street commercial development, a 2-story building with a mix of office and retail space in Charleston near the Outer Bridge crossing. If approved, the project would enable around 170 jobs. We will also vote on the removal of a portion of isolated designated open space to allow for a 2-family home at 56 William Avenue, located in the Special South Richmond Development District. Next up, a vote on Special Natural Area District authorization to build a home at 37 Fairview Place, also in Staten Island. And sticking in the same neighborhood, we will vote on a certification to legalize a private home's existing pool at 5 St. James Place. Final votes for today are on 3 zoning lot subdivisions in Staten Island located at 4983 Amboy Road, 1014 Annandale Road, and 356 Bradford Avenue. We will talk in a moment about our public hearing on the subject of South Richmond zoning relief, some of which would affect the need for us to vote on some of the applications that I just noted that we're going to be voting on today into the future. For today's public hearings, New Yorkers are invited to testify on the Independent Budget Office's plan to acquire new office space at 80 Pine Street in the Financial District to accommodate its 30 full-time staff. Also in Manhattan, we'll hold a hearing on a proposal for an automated parking garage as part of a residential tower at 262 Fifth Avenue in Nomad, just 3 blocks north of Madison Square Park. Heading up to the Bronx, we will open the floor to testimony on a rezoning at 893 Eagle Avenue, a proposed building in Morrisania that will, if approved, include over 80 homes, of which 50 would be supportive, 30 would be income restricted. The project includes counseling offices and a public staircase to connect Eagle Avenue and East 161st Street. We're also holding a public hearing today, as noted a moment ago, on the Department of City Planning's own South Richmond Zoning Relief Initiative. Today's rules for the Special South Richmond Development District in Staten Island force homeowners to navigate a labyrinth of pricey, time-consuming regulations to install a pool or to remove a tree on their property, for example. But larger sites with sensitive natural features don't always get the same scrutiny. This imbalance needs correcting, and that's what this plan will do, cutting red tape while also improving the tools that we have to achieve policy goals, including on environmental protection and sustainability. I was really pleased to see this plan receive favorable recommendations from Staten Island Community Board 3 and Borough President Vito Fossella. We will also hear from the public on a proposed designation for the Linden Street Historic District in Bushwick, Brooklyn. And last but not least, we will hold a hearing on the project at 1233 57th Street in Borough Park, Brooklyn, proposed residential building with 60 homes, 18 of them to be permanently income restricted, located around the corner of from the D train. This would be a good example of transit-oriented development. Lots on the docket today. So let's get to it. Sarah, let's take it away.
Good morning. This is a City Planning Commission public meeting held remotely through the NYC Engage portal and in person in the CPC hearing room, 120 Broadway, Lower Concourse. Today is Wednesday, June 28, 2023. I will now call the roll. Chair Garodnick.
Here.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Present.
Commissioner Bozark is absent. Commissioner Cerullo, I believe we have on Zoom.
Yes, here.
Commissioner Crowell.
Present.
Commissioner Duick.
Here.
Commissioner Gold.
Here.
Commissioner Goodrich. Commissioner Kermani is absent. Commissioner Marin is on Zoom.
I am here.
Commissioner Osorio.
Here.
And I believe we have Commissioner Ramprashad on Zoom.
Here.
A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the special public meeting of Monday, June 26, 2023.
Great. On the minutes, I make a motion to approve the minutes of June 26th. Is there a second?
Second.
Vice Chairman has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the ayes have it. Minutes are approved.
Scheduling, calendar numbers 1 through 9. We have resolutions for adoption scheduling Wednesday, July 12, 2023, for a public hearing to be held in person in the CPC hearing room, 120 Broadway, and remotely through the NYC Engage portal.
Great. On the resolutions, I make a motion to approve the resolutions. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Gold. For the second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Great. The resolutions are adopted.
The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 8. Borough of Brooklyn, calendar number 10, 1160 Flushing Avenue, CD4, C210314ZMK, in the matter of an application for a zoning map amendment concerning 1160 Flushing Avenue. For a favorable report on calendar number 10, Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Aye.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
I vote no because I think the proposed rezoning area is inappropriate. I acknowledge the long legacy of Evergreen as an industrial retention advocate, but I believe that lots 29 and 40 should be removed from the proposal in order to maintain and support the growth of industrial manufacturing in the IBC.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 10. Borough of Brooklyn, calendar numbers 11 and 12, Greenpoint Landing, parcel 5C2, waterfront. CD1, calendar number 11, N230035ZAK. Calendar number 12, N230036ZAK, and the matter of applications for the grant of authorizations concerning Greenpoint Landing, parcel 5C2, waterfront. For the adoption of calendar numbers 11 and 12. Chair Grodnick.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Surlu.
Yes.
Commissioner Kroll.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Mudden.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar numbers 11 and 12 have been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 13 through 18. Water Street Commercial Development, CD3, calendar number 13, C140316ZSR. Calendar number 14, C190188MMR. Calendar number 15, N140317RAR. Calendar number 16, N140318RAR. Calendar number 17, N140319ZAR. Calendar number 18, N140321ZCR. And the matter of applications for a special permit and a city map amendment, and for the grant of authorizations and a certification concerning Water Street Commercial Development. For favorable reports on calendar numbers 13 and 14, and for the adoption of calendar numbers 15, 16, 17, and 18. Chair Grodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Surlu.
Yes.
Commissioner Kroll.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Mudden.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 13 and 14. Calendar numbers 15, 16, 17, and 18 have been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 19, 56 William Avenue, CD2, N230068ZRR, and the matter of an application for a zoning text amendment concerning 56 William Avenue. For a favorable report on calendar number 19, Chair Grodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Surlu.
Yes.
Commissioner Kroll.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Madden.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 19. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 20, 37 Fairview Place, CD2, N230236ZAR, and the matter of an application for the grant of an authorization concerning 37 Fairview Place for the adoption of calendar number 20. Chair Grodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Surlu.
Yes.
Commissioner Kroll.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Mudden.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 20 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 21 and 22, 5 St. James Place, CD2, calendar number 21, N230304ZCR, calendar number 22, N230305ZCR, and the matter of applications for the grant of certifications concerning 5 St. James Place for the adoption of calendar numbers 21 and 22. Chair Grodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Surlu.
Yes.
Commissioner Kroll.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Mudden.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar numbers 21 and 22 have been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 23, 24, and 25, CD3, calendar number 23, N220089 RCR 4983 Amboy Road. Calendar number 24, N230200 RCR 1014 Annandale Road. Calendar number 25, N230202 RCR 356 Bradford Avenue. And the matter of applications for the grant of certifications concerning 4983 Amboy Road, 1014 Annandale Road, and 356 Bradford Avenue for the adoptions of calendar numbers 23, 24, and 25. Chair Grodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dwight.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Madden.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar numbers 23, 24, and 25 have been adopted. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 9.
Great. Let's get right to it. We're asking those who are testifying today to limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Madam Secretary, why don't you introduce the first item on today's agenda?
Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 26, 80 Pine Street IBO office space. CD1 N230279PXM, public hearing in the matter of an application for the notice of intent to acquire office space concerning 80 Pine Street IBO office space.
Terrific. So on behalf of calendar number 26 and the IBO office space application, we have Liam Sullivan, Marlette Simpson, Carrie Lowe, and Jacqueline Sherman. Welcome. Push it till the button's green. There you go. Perfect.
Got it.
Welcome.
Thank you. I will be presenting on behalf of the Independent Budget Office, and our team is available to answer questions. First off, on behalf of our new director, Louisa Chafee, we want to thank you for your consideration of this application. This is a very important step forward for us. As you'll see in the slides, assuming I can do the clicker, next slide. We've been in this location since we were first stood up in 1996. The Independent Budget Office provides research, analytics, and both on budget and budget-related policy information to elected officials under our charter authority specifically, as well as to other stakeholders, including members of the public, community boards, organizations, and the like. Our charter-based authority comes from the 1989 charter revision, actually the same charter revision that established the current structure of the Planning Commission. And we have additional legislative authority that was added by the state legislature and the city council over education and economic development activities. Next slide. As we go, as I mentioned, the space at 110 William has been basically where we've been since more or less day one. It was noted that there are 30 employees currently on staff. We are actually funded for a few more. We're funded and can go perhaps to 38 or 40 employees. We simply don't have space is one of the constraint issues. We also have no space for interns or graduate fellows, which are very important to our work. To answer Commissioner Knuckles' question from review session, it is not lost on us that we might get a better landlord than we currently have now, but that the primary issue here for us is space constraint, both to get an open floor plate and to be able to be in a space where essentially the construction work that we will do is very minimal and is very efficient. Were we to stay within 110, the constraints in our particular floor would be would cause a need for very expensive renovation. The space that we've identified in 80 Pine is almost move-in ready. We are only making minor. We value engineered the original plan to eliminate virtually all of the construction that had been contemplated, and we're just moving a few partitions in order to facilitate a public meeting room, which is another key element that we were unable to have in the current configuration. Next slide. 80 Pine is, as you can see, well located for what we need for proximity to the key city stakeholders that we deal with, principally the council. And that's it.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your being here. And let me see if there are questions for you from the commission. This may be a pretty straightforward one, so we will spare you. Thank you very much.
I have a question, Chair.
Oh, I'm very sorry.
That's okay. I realize now that when you don't see the hand, I should just jump in.
I can't. Yes, good. I'm glad. No, that's perfect. You should definitely speak up if you're on the Zoom, because I cannot see you from here. So go for it, Commissioner. Thank you.
That's quite all right. Ma'am, thank you for your presentation this morning. I heard something today that I hadn't heard, and so I'd like to peel it back a little bit to try and better understand where it is that we're having, as a city, challenges with office space. So you mentioned that you wanted to get a better landlord. So I'm trying to understand. Yeah, I say that without sincerity because we see these applications coming to us more frequently, and we always question as to why the city's moving and juggling space and why not purchasing space. And so those questions always come to us in our head. And now when you say better landlord, so what were the challenges in your existing space, and were those challenges met with your new space, and do you hope to overcome those challenges in the future?
With full disclosure, I was quoting Commissioner Knuckles from a review session, and it was said in jest primarily. Director Chafee became the director of IBO in March of this past year, and I joined her shortly thereafter. We have not had significant experiences with the landlord that would necessarily color our thoughts one way or the other. We have heard from other city agencies that have moved out that this has been a building that has had some struggles. On the other hand, this is a building that I think, as the Commission knows, the ACS is moving into with substantial amount of space. And I think what that speaks to is the construction efficiency issue that I mentioned earlier. ACS is going to be using enough space and is going to be able, as a large agency, to make the kinds of infrastructure improvements that will make that presumably good space and useful space for ACS. We're a tiny little agency, and we occupy a small and very rabbit warren-like space in the current configuration, and it would not have been practical for us to reconfigure to meet our needs.
Understood. That makes all the sense in the world. I'm just trying to figure out if our inventory of buildings is such that the infrastructure, the electrical, the internet, and all those other associated items to help a building function properly are outdated, and are we going to be seeing more of these moves in these buildings? That's all I'm trying to gauge. So I really appreciate your response today. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Okay, that's all I see. I see no members of the public wishing to testify on calendar number 26. So we will close the hearing on this item and open the hearing on our next item. Madam Secretary, if you would do the honors.
Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 27, 262 Fifth Avenue, CD5 C230094 ZSM, public hearing of the matter of an application for a special permit concerning 262 Fifth Avenue.
Great. And on behalf of the applicant team, for 10 minutes, we have Eric Knowles, Jerry Johnson, Jeff Rubin, and Yoram Barrow. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Eric Knowles from Fox Rothschild. We're counsel to 262, the owners of 262 Fifth Avenue, 5 Points Development, and we're here to talk about a special permit for an accessory parking facility. Next slide. The site it's a 5,000 square foot site, the corner of 29th Street and Fifth Avenue. It's a C52 zoning district, permits 12 FAR and towers as of right. It's also within the Manhattan core, where accessory parking for 20% of the residential units is permitted as of right. The building itself will be approximately 95,000 square feet of floor area for all residential use, 26 residential apartments, and a 23 space accessory garage below grade. Just a little background, as I said, 23 spaces, but the driveway, curb cut, and garage itself are all permitted as of right. We're only here seeking an increment of about 18 spaces. It'll be an automated parking system. These are pretty prevalent around the city in these types of buildings for the last decade or so. Completely self-controlled, so really no kind of human error as it, entering and exiting the garage. Overall, the garage is very small, only 23 spaces, so we really don't anticipate it causing a lot of traffic congestion. But, again, to avoid any sort of, conflicts there, and we'll show on the plans momentarily, there are some additional provisions in terms of loading and unloading in the subcellar to prevent, conflicts with cars coming in and out that we really don't think that's going to be an issue. But what we're really proud of is that it's going to be a fully electric parking garage. Now, what that means is that all spaces will be EV ready, so the infrastructure to charge your car will be in the garage. So when a driver pulls in and parks their car on the pallet will have a plug that you can plug your car in, and then the elevator will take it down to one of the lower levels. And within the lower levels, there'll be 11 spaces equipped with a EV level 2 charger, which can charge a car with up to 8 to 10 hours for a full charge. And while that's only half of the spaces, the system we programmed to automatically rotate cars in and out if all 23 cars want to be charged. So we think that's kind of there's no other garage that we know of in the city that has that capability. So we think it's a great amenity for the residents. We think it's going to promote the ownership of electrical vehicles. And just some other sustainability measures in terms of the project overall that the developer has taken kind of great lengths to go to. It'll be an electric building, but for gas for cooking and the generator. It'll have triple glazed windows, 50,000 square feet of solar panels, filtered fresh air hourly, energy recovering ventilators in each apartment. And overall, the envelope will exceed code efficiency performance standards by 20% and comply with Zone Green. So along with the garage and the EV charging stations, just a lot of efforts to go above and beyond what's required by code in terms of sustainability and addressing the issues of climate change and global warming. And here's the plan. I think as you saw at review session, the driveway is about 100 feet west of Fifth Avenue. Cars will pull into the elevator, which there'll be a pallet in there. The car will sit on the elevator, and then drivers will remove all their belongings, go to the vestibule immediately to the east, put in their code, and then the elevator will take the garage to one of the available spaces. And if they want to put in information about electric charging, this is where they can do so. So it's brought to one of the spaces below grade. And as you can see, here are the 3 subcellar and cellar levels. The elevator's in your upper left. And when it gets to the desired level, the robot will pick up the pallet and move it to one of the various spaces that's available. And here is a section. Again, all cars will be below grade on the 3 levels. And again, while we're here, the special permit, 5 spaces are as of right based on the 26 units in the apartment. We're seeking an increase of 18, but otherwise the driveway, the garage, the curb cut, it will be built because it's permitted as of right. And in terms of the findings, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Good morning, Chair Garodnick and Commissioners. My name is Jeff Rubin. I'm a planner with Philip Habib and Associates. As indicated on this slide, the application easily meets the finding that the number of spaces requested is not excessive in relation to new residential development and changes in parking supply according to the methodology prescribed by the Department of City Planning. Regarding other findings, in terms of traffic, although a project of this small size does not require an EAS, we prepared a travel demand forecast following standard seeker methodologies. The forecast shows that the proposed 23-space residential accessory parking garage will generate only 8 daily vehicle trips on a weekday and 9 daily vehicle trips during a weekend day. There would be no more than 1 vehicle trip in any given hour. As such, it would not unduly increase traffic congestion. And as for parking demand, census data suggest that vehicle ownership across Manhattan is positively correlated with high-income households. Given that this will be a building with large family units, each over 3,000 square feet, the data suggests that the building will have a much higher vehicle ownership rate than the surrounding area. While the area's census tracts have a 31.5% vehicle ownership rate for owner-occupied units, the building's families will be comparable to those in neighborhoods with concentration of high-income homeowners. Census data from comparable areas show vehicle ownership rates for owner-occupied households of 75% in West Tribeca, 68% in the area just below Central Park, and 86% for Carnegie Hill on the Upper East Side. Thank you, and I think I'm turning it over to Jerry Johnson now, if I'm not mistaken.
Next slide. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, or good morning. The parking regulations adopted in the 1980s, along with the investment in mass transit, were successful in reducing individual vehicular commuting and the corresponding increased use of mass transit. Simultaneously, along with most of the country, vehicle ownership by households in Manhattan or in New York City increased. While Manhattan has the lowest percentage of the 5 boroughs, vehicle ownership rates in higher income owner-occupied households is much higher, as noted earlier in our presentation. Over the last 40 years, as commuting by vehicles decreased, the commercial parking lots replaced the commuter vehicles with residential long-term parking. And as city continues to develop, these lots disappear, the number of spaces for residents is declining. I understand studies suggest that if you build parking, vehicles will follow. I agree, but believe it relates more to commuting. It's a fact that residents in New York City own cars. However, residents within transit-rich areas do not use them for commuting primarily. Instead, they're used for special trips and weekend escapes outside of the city. In the interim, residents need places to park. We believe the proposed accessory parking garage meets the findings of the permit, will not impact pedestrian or vehicular traffic in the area, and will serve the residents of the subject building. We are available to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. I see some questions popping up already. Let me just start it off with a couple of perhaps simple ones. In one of the comments was that as it relates to the finding that the location would not unduly interrupt the flow of pedestrian traffic, the conclusion was that there would be no more than 1 vehicle per hour. But it also seems like it's going to be much less than 1 vehicle per hour here. I mean, it would be no more than 1 vehicle per hour, but it also seems like with if you had 23 spaces in a building like this, you might go many hours without any vehicle coming or going. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. All right. It sounded like the expectation was there would be 1 vehicle per hour, but what you're saying is at most.
Yeah, generally, yes.
Right. Okay. All right. Say a little bit more about the expectation that unit owners in this building are likely to have vehicles. Can you say a little bit more about that conclusion?
Yeah, I mean, this is a for sale. It'll be for individual owners, a condo. And we believe at the price point of the people purchasing the units that they're going to be higher income, and they will more likely, like similar to the other neighborhoods in the city, Tribeca West, Carnegie Hill, 57th Street, where it's been noted that average high income owner-occupied units have a higher percentage of car ownership. We believe this will fall more in line with that. So we believe that the 23 spaces will be occupied by all of the people in the building.
And do you think it's also fair to say that if we were not to afford you the special permit for the extra 18 spaces, that those unit owners and car owners would need to find parking somewhere else in the neighborhood?
Correct. It would be either on the street where currently inventory is very low based on just if you look around the city, and then nearby parking garages in the area that exist today.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go to Commissioner Dweck and then Commissioner Gold.
Thank you. I certainly see the merits of the application. My question perhaps is better for Jeff from Philip Habib. Do you know if the solar energy generated from the 50,000 square feet of panels would generate enough electricity to charge all the cars, supposing they're all EV cars?
I don't know. I don't know if there's others on our team who can address it, and if we can't, I'll just say that I can't address, and I don't know if anyone here can, but if we can look into it and get back to you in writing.
Yeah, I just like to figure out if it's a net zero on energy usage for cars.
We'll get back to you on that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Gold.
Just, excuse me, wanted to follow up a little bit on the chair's question. So the view is, at the end of the day, 23 spots, 26 units. And so is the thinking to sell the spots with the units, or would these be, let's say, rental or lease spots?
The actual structure of how it happens within the building is undetermined yet, but they would be tied to a unit in some form. Yeah.
But the expectation, it sounds like, would be that these would be limited perhaps to the folks who are buying the building. It's not going to be a public garage, if you will.
That's
got it. And then second, as you think about it for the purchasers here, it sounds like these vehicles probably aren't used for commuting. They're more used perhaps to pick up children or maybe to get out of the city on the weekend or whatever it is. It doesn't sound like these are daily drivers, or are they?
That's
correct. Give us a sense based on.
That's correct. We don't believe that they will be used for commuting. That they're more for special trips, special occasions, and then escape weekend excursions out of the city, either to a second home or a visit somewhere else.
Got it. Okay. Thanks. Actually, just one more. We're asking for 23 and not 26. Is that
space constraints?
It's space. Okay, perfect. So the thought is that it's very likely or possible that each of these folks would have a vehicle, and if they don't put it here, they put it somewhere else.
Correct.
Nearby. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. A quick follow-up to Commissioner Dweck's question. Thank you for raising that point. So we'll hear from you in terms of whether the capacity of the potential solar array will power the automated parking garage. But I just want to make sure that to confirm that there's an intent that they'll be connected. In other words, you will be generating renewable on site to power some of the energy
That's correct.
Requirement. Okay, good.
That's correct.
And then the other question that I had was, in the past, the Commission has had concerns in terms of the safety of these robots, and so I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about whether you've reviewed some of the concerns, how is the fire department, for example, feeling about it and so forth. Can you help us understand this a little better?
Yeah, right now it's currently being reviewed. There's an application and it's currently being reviewed by the fire department. When we hear back from them, we will obviously address any concerns that they might have, but they have not weighed in yet. We're waiting for them to finish their review. In terms of the use of the robots and the capability, the operator is an operator that this will be their first one in New York, but they are well established in Israel, and they, the building itself. Eric knows more of the details on this, but they've purchased extra parts. There will be somebody nearby, and in the building, staff will be trained on how to do some of the more limited repairs to the robots if a physical repair is required, but mostly it's a software issue, and they will be monitored 24/7 through by the company, and so usually if something happens, it's fixed within an hour.
Thank you. Can I ask one quick follow-up? So thank you for that. And I actually have another quick question, which is, can you help us understand the type of jobs that usually are implied in terms of the day-to-day operations of the automated parking, or how does that compare to sort of like the type of staff that you would otherwise have in a normal sort of parking system?
Well, it'll be primarily operated by the building staff.
Okay.
And the building staff will be trained in terms of maintenance and how to keep the system running. The elevator itself will be contracted through an elevator maintenance company here in New York. If there's any problems with the elevator, it'll be built pursuant to a New York company will build the elevator, and it'll be operated and maintained by that company.
Thank you. So just to make sure I understood, so that there's no sort of change in the number of jobs that you would otherwise require if you had a normal parking operation?
I believe there will be, I mean, if it's an automated, you have less, obviously, if you have a fully manned garage, it's more people. Right?
Yeah. I think the point I would make is that a garage of this few spaces, 23, there's great diseconomies of scale to actually have full-time staff. So, you don't see too many of them in Manhattan because, and a lot of times they would actually be, for this number of spaces, they would be self-park. Because to have they used to joke about the lonely Maytag repairman in the ads. This would be kind of like that. If you were a parking garage attendant at this garage, as the chair alluded to earlier, you would spend many hours probably not doing much of anything. So I think it's unlikely that a 23-space garage would have a full-time employee if it was a non-automated garage in any event.
In any case, right?
Yeah,
got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate the Maytag repairman reference. Commissioner Crowell.
Yes, part of my question was just covered by Commissioner Osorio. Specifically, a number of us were interested in the fire department's input on this and understanding when the technology breaks down. Some additional questions are where it has been used in Israel, what is the experience, how prevalently has it been used, and is there anything off the shelf on the web with a video representation of how it works to help us better understand as we make a final determination?
There is, and it's been a video of how it works. It's been provided to staff, and they have a copy of it. So
great.
You can get that from them. It's hard from our conversations with the operator in preparation of this hearing. They actually respond very quickly if there's an issue, but it's not like it's major issues all the time. They've got it handled. We can get more detail and data on that for you if necessary, but they were competent and they walked us through how it works and how, if something happens, what happens and how it happens, and it's, they usually respond within an hour, and it's fixed within an hour.
Yeah, so they have, I believe, 13 that are operational in Israel and maybe a half dozen in construction right now. So they've been doing this for a few decades.
In densely urban areas, Tel Aviv?
Yes.
Tel Aviv is about the only densely populated area. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. Could you go to the graphic of the garage that depicts the garage plan?
The low grade or at grade?
At grade.
It's on our screen, so.
Coming.
Okay. Yeah, so just walk me through the mechanics. A car comes in and it enters into the elevator, right?
Correct.
And so the vestibule is just ahead of that space?
Yeah, this is looking west, so it's just below is the vestibule. So it'll pull into the driveway,
right?
Go through, a gate will come up when, they access it through a code or access it through an app. Gate pulls up, they pull into the elevator, they park the car on top of a pallet, which is sitting on the elevator. Everything comes out, and then just to the, east, so look, just below is where that vestibule is, where the keypad that they'll put in their code, and then send it down to the lower levels. So it's, I don't know if I don't have a pointer, but if you see the vehicle elevator and there's that kind of that white space just below, that's the vestibule.
Here?
Further north.
Further north. Up. Yeah, just
the white area.
The white area. Yep, right there.
Yeah, right there.
No, to your left. Yep, right there.
Yeah, we need a pointer.
Yeah, the light pointer. Okay. Laser pointers that confused, yeah.
All right. Because it's turned.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Yeah. No, I'm good.
Commissioner Rampersad on Zoom.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. A lot of the questions I had were already answered. I just have two quick questions more. With regards to, you said each space has an electric vehicle charging station. If the car is to come in, is there someone plug it in, or how does that work? Can you just walk us through that?
So the owner would be the one plugging it in. It's similar to plugging it to a charging station, you know, if you were driving around or in a parking lot somewhere. So they'll take out their own cord, plug in their car to the socket, which is in the pallet, and then essentially the robot and the elevator take it from there to one of the stations below grade that when the robot pulls it in one of the lower levels, it moves it to one of these level 2 charging stations, which has a port in the floor, and the pallet is kind of lifted up, and so the port pops up, connects into the pallet, and it kind of is a pass-through to the car.
Right.
Gives it the electric charge.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. The other question I had was, God forbid there are actually 2 cars that come in within the hour. What mechanisms are in place so that the car that's out in the street that wants to turn in knows that maybe there's somebody waiting for a car? Is there some kind of system that's in place, proposed to be in place, so people know?
Well, again, I think as you mentioned, it's going to be incredibly low because of the 9 car, at the most, 9 cars in and out of that garage in a day. But in the event that happens, any car, priority goes to cars coming in. So any vehicle that accesses or chooses the app to enter, whether it be within the driveway or several blocks away, because they'll be able to do so, it stops any other movement in the garage. So if simultaneously, maybe a minute later, somebody comes down to the lobby and wants to retrieve their vehicle, that can't happen until all cars going in are processed. So the way that it functions is that is to get all cars off the street and into the garage as quickly as possible to avoid that conflict.
Okay, thank you for that clarification as well. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time and your presence here today. I see no other people wishing to testify on this item, calendar number 27, at 262 Fifth Avenue. So we're going to close the hearing today, but we thank you very much for your presence and your testimony.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, let's call the next item, please.
For the Bronx, calendar numbers 28, 29, and 30. CD3, calendar number 28, C220334ZMX. Calendar number 29, N220335ZRX. Calendar number 30, C220336ZSX. Public hearing in the matter of applications for a zoning map and zoning text amendments and a special permit.
Okay, thank you very much. I have an applicant team here for 893 Eagle Avenue rezoning, which consists of Richard LaBelle, who is at the podium, and includes Ricardo Oquendo, Ed Popiti, Tony Shitemi, Kevin Williams, Amanda Iannotti, and Ricardo Oquendo.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome.
Thank you. Chair, Commissioners, good morning. Richard LaBelle of Sheldon LaBelle PC for the applicant, Housing Options and Geriatric Association Resources, more commonly known as HOGAR. I'm going to start with Ed, by introducing Ed, who's going to give a slight background with regards to HOGAR, a valued nonprofit in the area. I'll then go through the land use actions that are contemplated today, and then Tony Shitemi will talk about the project architecture. At the conclusion of our presentation, the entire applicant team is available to answer questions. So I would now introduce Ed.
Good morning to all of the commission. I'm Ed Papetti, CEO of HOGAR Inc., and thank you for the opportunity to present our project this morning. For the past 27 years, HOGAR has provided housing and supportive services to our community's most vulnerable individuals and families. This proposed project at Eagle Avenue and 161st Street seeks to transform a property that has been vacant in excess of 50 years into one that provides affordable housing for those in need, services for those in need, and to provide employment opportunities to those seeking to join HOGAR in helping those who require our helping hands. As you can see from these slides, the present condition of the lot for 50 years, it is an eyesore, and we hope to transform that. With that, I'd like to turn the presentation to our development team, and thank you again.
Next slide, please. Actually, if you can forward 3 slides to the proposed development. So we're hopeful today that the Commission will join Community Board 3 and the Bronx Borough President in approving this application. Can we go back 2 slides to the project summary? There we go. So, or the proposed development. So the proposed development contemplates 4 actions. One would be a zoning map amendment from an existing R6 to an R72 district, which would rezone 6 lots in order to allow for the development of the 4 lots of the site, roughly 8,900 square feet with an 11-story building. The second action would be for, of course, an amendment to mandatory inclusionary housing to allow for options 1 and 2. The third action would be to allow for a special permit pursuant to 74903 to provide for community facility floor area to apply for the site. And the second would be a PAA public access area for stairs that would be adjacent to the parcel, and those will be included in the plans. The statistics with regards to the development are before you. This is an 11-story plus cellar and subcellar building. This is a particularly challenging site because given the elevations of East 161st and Eagle Avenue, there's a separation of greater than 30 feet, which Tony will discuss. So at the end of the development, we would intend to have a 55,000 square foot, 6.18 FAR Use Group 3 community facility building. The units would be 83 units, 50 supportive housing units in the form of studios at or below 50% of adjusted median income, and 33 affordable housing units at the numbers which you see before you, a mix of 9 studios, 12 one-bedrooms, and 12 two-bedrooms. And those would be at or below 60% AMI. The program design, again, has entrances on East 161st and Eagle, as well as a subcellar with lobby and associated accessory space. The next slide is the zoning map, which demonstrates, while challenging to read, demonstrates why the immediate area is well suited for this rezoning. You can see to the south of the site an R7X district that was pursuant to the St. Anne's Avenue development rezoning in 2008, which allowed for medium density zoning at an R7X, as well as to the west of the site, the Boricua Village rezoning in 2007, which allowed for upwards of R8 zoning for both educational and residential buildings. The next slide is a tax map which shows the immediate development area. Again, this is a corner with excellent street access to both Eagle Avenue and East 161st Street, and the proposal is for the lots outlined in red to be part of the development site. They are all currently vacant. The next slide is the land use map, which I think well demonstrates why this site is particularly well suited for an R72 rezoning. First, you note that the C44 zoning, which is adjacent to the site immediately to the west and on the entirety of the western portion of the block, already permits an R72 equivalent at floor area ratios of 3.44 or greater, depending on the nature of the development. In addition, you can see the R7X and R8 to the west of the site. As previously noted, this is an area where medium and medium high density zoning districts abound. The street system in the area is also well suited with excellent street access for both the site as well as the entirety of the block. 3rd Avenue, adjacent to the block, has a wide street, which allows for several bus lanes as well as benefiting from nearby subway systems. I believe the 2 and 5 lines lie within 6 blocks of the site. So it's a really a site which is really well suited for this type of development. With that, the next several slides are photographs, and I would introduce Tony Shitemi of UAI to discuss the project architecture.
Mr. Shitemi on Zoom?
He is on Zoom. There we go.
Okay.
Tony, we don't hear your audio.
He's off mute, but the mic.
While Tony fixes his audio, I'm just going to run through the contextual and architectural aspects of the presentation. Fortunately, I have a junior architecture degree from spending so much time with those guys. If we can go past the photographs to the
how's
to the
this?
first.
Is this any better?
There we go. Thank you, Tony.
Okay. Although, Rich, I was sitting back to listen to you. Sorry about that technical glitch. So good morning, members of the commission. I'm Tony, architect for OGAR, here to present the design description. Sorry about the snafu. I'll give you a few overall highlights and the essentials of the project. As you can see, the project, and as Richard demonstrated, the project is located at the intersection of 161st and Eagle Ave, which flies 33 feet above 161st, presenting a very interesting site in terms of the slopes. With respect to building heights, the design aims to respect the existing heights of surrounding buildings. Although the new building will be 11 stories tall, it will be set back from the street. Along East 161st Street, the building will drop to 2 stories. Can we go to the next slide? The large perspective, if it's available. And that'll relate to the quick narrative. We have that overall perspective, Amanda?
It's one more, or 2 more from, one more from me. There you go.
Okay, the one of the building. I'm sorry.
One more.
Yeah, sorry, folks. Okay, so here we go. So, all right. So the east is at the bottom right, and the west is to the left. North is facing up the page and south. So again, the building aims to respect the heights of the surrounding buildings. There'll be 11 stories. Will be set back from the street, as you can see. Along 161st Street, the building will drop 2 stories and then step up to 8 stories, acknowledging the existing 5- and 6-story residences. And then we can go to the one before. The aerial maps indicate the presence of 200-foot tall residences just 2 blocks away, and others of similar height in the vicinity. Are we able to go to that diagram? I think it was before.
I think it's back to.
Yeah, sorry about the shuffling.
I'm going to go back to, back 2 slides. Okay.
I think it was right before this. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so again, you can see some 200-foot buildings around the vicinity. Our building's 114 feet. So within the vicinity, we're complying with, or we're keeping respectful to what's surrounding. And then going back to the rendering, the building facade will predominantly feature brick, which is the main characteristic of the neighborhood. It's an old neighborhood with 40s and 30s buildings. Additionally, at the upper level, we'll have glass fiber reinforced concrete panels with the warm colors, which we incorporate in order to create a warm, welcoming feeling. The structure will be concrete block and plank. As the engineers proceed, that's our anticipation. So we're improving the accessibility in the area.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Mr.
Shatemi.
Okay. Richard, you. Right. Are there questions for the team? Okay. Commissioner Dweck, Commissioner Benjamin, Commissioner Osorio, in that order.
Thank you, Richard. Can you explain to me the staircase on the side, what that serves exactly?
Sure. So
going to maintain it.
So given the separation in grade of 34 feet and the fact that this development is also subject to the special permit, upon discussion with the department, it was determined that it would be beneficial to allow for this stairway to be permanently operated and maintained by Hogar. So there will be a restrictive declaration as part of the approval recorded against the property. Hogar would provide for maintenance of the staircase, would provide for security, 24/7 access, as well as some other benefits to the area in terms of public art, which would appear within the stairway itself. We would note that given the separation in that grade, this is actually a tremendous benefit to residents on East 161st Street, who will now be able to utilize that and save themselves what we determined to be a relatively long walking distance in order to be able to access Eagle Avenue and some parks and such and public gardens below. So it's really one of the benefits we discussed with the community board as well as with the Bronx Borough President, and the applicant is happy to provide that as well.
I realize that it might be very cost prohibitive, but any accommodations for handicap accessible?
I'm going to defer to Tony with regards to handicap accessibility.
Okay, so within the building will be entirely handicap accessible. With respect to the access stair, no, there's no elevator or anything like that at this stage.
Would it be, maybe I would recommend you pursue, perhaps in conjunction with the borough president's office or with the council member's office or with the city, some ability to provide handicap access before you construct it. It'd be a great public benefit to people.
I think it's something that the applicant would be happy to explore. And the project is receiving public funding as Hogar's a nonprofit and has been working on this coalition for years. So, with something we would look at, obviously there's some tremendous challenges. I'd also just take the opportunity to add that the site itself, given the rock outcroppings, cost literally tens of millions of dollars merely to allow for this development. But again, we understand the worthwhile nature of the request, and it's something I think we would love to provide.
I'd love to see more public funding for it to get it done.
Understood.
Thank you.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Yes, I have a question that I had asked at our review session. I know that generally speaking, there's a 50% community preference. And I had asked the question, since much of this is an NFP with sleeping accommodations, is there a community preference for this part of the facility?
So there's not. The community preference would lie with the affordable units, and Hogar would draw from the larger population of special needs individuals in order to accommodate in order to populate the special needs units, the supportive housing units. I would note, however, Commissioner Benjamin, that in Hogar's other developments, particularly within the Bronx, they noted, because this came up at the community board, that an inordinately large percentage of those residents actually were from the Bronx and the surrounding area. So we would expect that same breakdown would lie with this application as well.
And what is the referral mechanism? Are they coming through intake centers at HPD or through intake centers at shelters, or how does Hobart do the intake? Where do they actively seek? I mean, I don't think it's like the HPD where you can go on the website and say, these are the buildings that are coming up and I can submit my name to the lottery. I assume there's an orderly intake.
There is Ed, if you're able to address that, are you able to discuss the intake process?
The intake, yes, thank you, Richard. The referral process comes from HASA, the funding and the special needs clients will be servicing for the supportive services. They'll come to be referred directly from HASA.
From the Bronx office or just generally citywide?
Generally citywide, but the fact, as Richard alluded to, is that predominantly we have another facility in Washington Avenue. Predominantly, it's Bronx residents. People within the community seek to stay in the community.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just for clarification, what is HASA, the acronym stand for?
It's for people with HIV/AIDS.
It was the HIV/AIDS Services Administration, I think.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Osorio, and then
it's part of HRA.
Yeah, it's a unit within HRA. It's been around for obviously quite some time. Okay, thank you.
It's a unit of HRA.
Thank you. Got it.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple questions. The first one, also to follow up on Commissioner Dweck's question. But first of all, it's exciting to see a passive house, fully electrified proposal. Congratulations, that's exciting. But of course, I want to see or hear a little bit more about that. So I'm wondering if you can first share a little bit more on how that's going to work. Like what are the components of that system? And also, what is the connection of kind of like your plan to comply with Local Law 97 with your plan to comply with 94 and 92? Sort of, I want to understand a little bit what's going to happen on the roofs. Your renderings show a very flat, what looks like concrete. So hence the question. And then the other part of the question has to do with, just really quickly, what is the plan, or will the passive house approach include provisions to power the lighting on the staircase, given the 24-hour sort of plan? Thank you.
Sure. It's a pleasure to answer that. The elements of the passive house definitely will include a well-insulated roof. There is a possibility to install a green roof at the top, which reduces the heat island effect as well and helps control stormwater. The thing that's still under analysis is whether photovoltaic cells may be possible. And that would affect whether we have the green roof below or not. In either case, the roof will be well insulated. The key component of the passive house is a tight envelope. And to achieve that, we're going to have very well insulated walls. We're going to have high performance windows, fiberglass windows that do not emit transfer temperature. We're going to have an all electric building, electric heat, electric by the use of VRF, variable refrigerant flow equipment, heating systems, as well as electric domestic hot water, and that'll be by the use of a heat pump. So all of those reduce not only the energy consumption, but also the carbon footprint, carbon effect of the building. We are going to have energy recovery systems so that as kitchens and bathrooms are exhausted, the heat that would otherwise escape is recaptured to supply the corridors of the building. So those are the primary components of the passive house goal that we are embarking on.
I guess, thank you for that. I guess the quick follow-up is, are you going to be generating any energy on site? Is there a plan for renewables?
So that is the analysis that the energy consultant has undertaken, and it relates to the area of the roof and the type of roofing system, whether it'll be a canopy type, which elevates the photocells above the entire roof, or whether they're lower down. And then given the number of panels from whichever of those options they'll select, how much power is generated. But I think that analysis is ongoing. Definitely we would like that. The other thing that we're considering is geothermal, the possibility for geothermal heat exchange. That also would have a great impact in terms of reducing energy costs and just being more environmentally friendly.
Thank you for that. I highly encourage you to consider. Yeah, that answers my question, and would love to see any additional information on this. This again is exciting. And then just a quick follow up. I don't think you did mention whether the lighting on the staircase is going to be connected to the system, or what is that? Can you share us a little bit whether this approach is also going to govern that?
Right. Apologies, I didn't get to that. I think I took too long with the snafus. Yeah, definitely the staircase will be well lit. There will be cameras looking at it that go right to the front desk, OGAR's front desk. So that stair will be very well monitored 24 hours. In addition, there's some windows facing the stairs. So if anything is happening, there'll be eyes to see, to keep everyone secure.
But the lighting specifically can you tell us a little bit more about that?
The lighting will be on the side of the building. We have to be careful so that it's not coming into windows. So we will anticipate having low lights at the level of the steps, as well as higher lights that are hooded. Those will be off the building, off the building's power.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Commissioner, any other questions? Commissioner Osorio, Commissioner Gold.
Thank you. Just wanted to, by way of follow-up, so if we're categorized as nonprofit with sleeping accommodations, aside from the affordable, on the supportive housing, is that considered permanent housing, or is that temporary placement?
My understanding is that the units are permanent units. Ed, can you follow up with that?
Yes, those are permanent, not transitional units.
Okay, and presumably the affordable units are the same. Would those have supportive services as well, the affordable units, or? I'm
going to, again, defer to Ed as to whether or not the affordable units can take advantage of the accessory services offered to the supportive units.
Directly, probably not, but indirectly, we will be able to provide linkages with all residents of the building for services that they can seek and need.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions from other commissioners? Don't see any. Do we, no other speakers? Okay, then we'll close the hearing. Thank you very much, Mr. Lobel.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 31, CD3, N230112ZRR. Public hearing in the matter of an application for a zoning text amendment concerning South Richmond zoning relief. Notice, a public hearing is being held by the City Planning Commission in conjunction with the above ULURP action to receive comments related to a draft environmental impact statement. This hearing is being held pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act and the City Environmental Quality Review.
All right, our first speaker will be Eric Knowles.
And performance.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Eric Knowles of Fox Rothschild, and we are counsel to Johnson Development Associates Incorporated, which is the applicant for several authorizations pursuant to the current special South Richmond Development District zoning text that would facilitate the development of a new warehouse and distribution center at 253 Richmond Valley Road on Staten Island. I'm testifying today to respectfully request a vesting provision be added to the proposed zoning text amendment so that applications that have been filed pursuant to the current special district regulations be allowed to continue under those regulations following the adoption of this text amendment. As background, we first contacted City Planning Staten Island office regarding this proposed development in February 2022. The applicant team and its consultants then spent 13 months preparing a land use application and environmental assessment statement for authorizations under sections 10764, 10765, and 10768 of the current special district zoning text. The application for these authorizations was formally filed with the department on March 17, 2023. However, subsequent to our filing, we first became aware of the proposed South Richmond text amendment application when it was referred out by the Commission on April 10, 2023, about 3 weeks later. With respect to the proposed development at 253 Richmond Valley Road, one of the effects of this text amendment is that it would result in the consolidation of two of the authorizations we are seeking into one, along with modifications to several of the findings of the current authorizations. It is our understanding that our application is in a position to be referred out at a review session in the very near future. However, if we are required to apply under the new text for these new authorizations, it would require a complete overhaul of our land use application and EAS. This would be an incredibly costly undertaking for the applicant and would cause significant delay due to the time needed to redo all the application materials and because the application could not be referred out until the text amendment is finally approved, which may be not for several months. While we appreciate the department's goal of simplifying the special district regulations to increase efficiency in the approvals process, the proposed text amendment would in fact have the opposite effect on our application and cause us greater delay and inefficiency in the approvals process. Accordingly, we would ask that a vesting provision be added to the new special district text to allow our application to proceed as filed pursuant to the current authorizations. Specifically, we would request that the vesting provision include that any authorization application filed under the special South Richmond District regulations in effect prior to the referral date of this proposed zoning text amendment be allowed to continue under such regulations until it is approved. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Benjamin?
Just so I understand, the site that you are representing is greater than an acre?
Yes.
Okay. Because I assume that if it was less than an acre, you would be okay with this.
But
okay.
Yes.
Mr.
Acting Chair.
Yes. Is that Commissioner Cerullo?
Yes.
How did I guess? Please proceed.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. What has been the discussion you've had with the Staten Island office about this? Obviously, this application moved forward, but as I'm sure you know, this application is sort of many years in the making, and has sort of seen different versions of it over time, from a much broader scope to this narrower South Richmond application. So I was just wondering, while you have indicated you've had the conversations with the Staten Island office and have indicated the different dates, what has their feedback been to you? Was it to just come today and request this? Was there sort of an outright, no, that's not going to be possible? Obviously, that's a decision for us to make, but I just want to get a sense of what that communication has been, because this is somewhat of a surprise in the process. At least for us, this has not been revealed prior to today.
So we, as I mentioned, we were instructed to file the application in March, and we didn't know about this this text amendment. We weren't informed by the Staten Island office of this text amendment until we saw it at the certified review session, and then we subsequently had conversations, and were informed that in other cases the commission has taken the opportunity to include vesting provisions in situations like this, where we had applied under a existing text and had done all the work under that that EAS and that zoning sections, and they could do that during their review. The commission could do that during its review process, and we were told that there's a email address that we could send an email to, and that would be about requesting this vesting provision, and that would have been.
Okay, and let me ask you this: in your sort of at the close of your comments, and I'm not sure if it was sort of generic or very specific, you had provided language that you thought obviously would accommodate the concerns that you and your client have about the changes that are being proposed here and the impacts that they have on you. But do you see that? It sounded to me, and again, it was just listening, so I'm not able to actually sort of apply the language to the language in the proposals, but it could potentially be very broad and impact any application that could be anywhere in the process at the time this may be adopted. Have you looked at that to see if there was, at least for our consideration in this, narrow language that could be presented to address this particular issue versus potentially undermining the changes that are coming, because anyone who has done anything in the process prior to our action would be covered by your suggested language? Just the sort of a narrowing focus versus creating something that opens the door for anything that anyone might have in the process at the time.
Sure, no, I understand that. I think in our narrowing text, we were proposing that since we had formally filed the application prior to the referral date, that we were essentially the application had been deemed complete by the department, so they had given us the green light to file it. That was kind of and that occurred before this was referred out. That was the cutoff. I think, and again, I don't speak for any other applicants other than our own. Maybe anything after, the referral date, you're put on notice, right? Our issue is we were not really necessarily put on notice. We were instructed to file, and then this occurred after the fact. So, we did all the work in anticipation of thinking that this was the text that was going to be there, and now we see that it's being modified.
Understood. So if you had been filed pre-certification, that's sort of the trigger date for you.
Yes. Yes.
Understood. Okay. I appreciate your testimony on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cirillo. Any other questions from you?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Knowles? There being none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Robert Kelly.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present to the Commission. My name is Robert Kelly, and I'm a spokesperson for the Building Industry Association of New York City, and I've been a market rate home builder and affordable housing developer for over 30 years. I would like to lend my support to the South Richmond proposal that is before you today, and in particular would like to emphasize the importance of the action items to remove the need for school seats in the South Richmond district and the need for simple subdivisions being reviewed by the local CPC office. As a builder-developer of both market rate and affordable housing on Staten Island, I have dealt with the talented people at the local CPC office for many years. To say they are overburdened with work is a tremendous understatement. By eliminating the need for the aforementioned submissions, the local office will be able to dedicate much more of their time to the things that are critical to good development, such as actual city planning, as opposed to drawing lines on tax maps and checking off boxes for school seats that we know are already in place. I should mention that the elimination of these requirements at the local office will benefit the housing industry on Staten Island greatly by literally cutting the approval process for small to medium and infill residential projects by half. As a private business owner, I can tell you that one of my most valuable assets is time. By expediting the approval process through the CPC and filing directly with DOB, projects will start sooner, product will be completed and go to market sooner, which is critical to managing costs and will allow that time and cost savings to be passed along to the end user. With the current incredible shortage of housing product in New York City, any savings of time and money is a win all around. By being able to start a project sooner, I can finish and deliver housing units that much quicker, allowing me then to move on to my next project and create even more housing that is so desperately needed in our city. I commend George Todorovic and the entire Staten Island CPC staff for their forward thinking on a job well done. I'd like to also mention, if I could, to the Commission, if they could see their way to motivating the local office to revisit the elimination of commercial components on secondary and tertiary streets in Staten Island. It, again, would be a great help to the affordable and pretty much civil service housing that's desperately needed on Staten Island. This was supposed to be part of this submission, and it kind of got lopped off at some point, but it is critical to hundreds of lots on Staten Island that really won't be developed until the commercial component is dropped on secondary and tertiary streets. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Commissioner Benjamin.
Just one quick question. I'm sure you heard the request of Mr. Knowles, who spoke before you, for some type of a vesting or grandfathering provision. Do you have any response? What do you think as a builder?
It's a great question. Again, coming from a selfish point of view, I've been working with the local office for probably probably since the time Amanda Burden was commissioner on getting some of these things done. And that has no reflection on the commission or the local office. But I understand their pain, because you can spend tremendous amounts of hours and time and money, and then, the game changes and you go back to the drawing board. And I can tell you, again, as a private developer, a lot of the lots especially on the south shore of Staten Island, are not developed because of some of the arduous rules that have been taken regarding to parking or just time constraints with the commission. So I do understand the pain, and if there's a way to fine tune it so that they don't get hurt, I would have to say I agree with that.
Okay, because I believe that basically any of the lots that are under 1 acre would benefit under this proposal,
Sure.
But lots, so I'm not sure that they require the vesting. But lots that are over the 1 acre that now have a different procedure would be the ones who would be affected by this proposal. And do you have any idea how many might be?
Not off the top of my head. I can tell you, just again from the private sector perspective, that to try and make any kind of economy of scale on a building, on a site that's an acre or less, is very, very difficult. So I understand their need to bulk up, because that's where savings comes into play.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Wait, Mr. Kelly, Commissioner Cerullo has a question.
Hi, Bob, very quickly, it's not so much a question, although I want to acknowledge the question that Commissioner Benjamin asked. I'm glad she asked your take on this. I really just wanted to, and I mentioned this at the review session on Monday, sort of acknowledge the collective work that was done by both the public sector and the private sector on getting to where we are today. And I know you and many of your colleagues in the industry were quite helpful in understanding much of the technical aspects of sort of the burdensome currently existing rules and regulations that will be provided relief. And I just, a lot of time, I know years actually went into this to get us where we are today. And I just wanted to acknowledge the sort of the successful process that the community came through with our elected officials and the private sector and community groups and environmentalists and neighborhood organizations and the community board. It really has proven to be very well. With that said, I will look forward to having further discussions about the issue that was raised by Mr. Knowles earlier, but did want to acknowledge that to you, Bob, and to other members of the industry who worked so hard on this.
Thank you. And I would just want to mention also,
can we just take a quick break? We do not have quorum right now, so I don't want to have anything said on the record that should not be said. All right.
I'll wait it out.
Yeah,
So, Commissioner Cerullo, if you have.
Oh, and I was so brilliant.
No, well, just freeze your brilliance for a few moments. And Mr. Kelly, maybe you should stay. And well, you can sit, but we may resume.
All right.
Yeah.
What happened? Cold 5 minutes?
I guess.
Sounds like a good idea for the restroom.
11:30?
11:30, yeah, 11:30.
Mr. Perez, you can approach the bench.
We'll do a 5-minute break.
We'll take a 5-minute break.
5-minute break, yeah.
And my plan to work.
You guys are weak, you can't even hold up.
I know, isn't it though? I'm good, how are you?
Okay.
David's behind. Right behind me.
All right. He wasn't here.
Yeah.
So you want to do up, Commissioner Sewell? Commissioner Cerullo?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, we're back in session. Mr. Kelly is there. You want to continue your?
Yeah, I won't prolong. I was just, I just wanted to acknowledge, sort of the work that had been done on this proposal and the role that the industry played in helping to craft it. And I just wanted to acknowledge that to Mr. Kelly as a representative of the industry who did work on this over the last several years. So that was it. I appreciate the opportunity to revisit that. Thank you, Mr. Acting Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions for Mr. Kelly?
I just wanted to close by, again, emphasizing the work that George Development Industries did on this.
Sure, you have, sorry?
Oh, your mic. No, you were far away.
Sorry. To use the phrase that, you can't fight City Hall is pretty much the case most of the time. But this group, they had a tough time between the civics, the council members, the community boards, even the borough president. They got beat up really bad on this, and they could have just dropped it and said, you know what, it's not worth it. We'll just go back to doing what we do. And they didn't. They came back and they listened to my industry, but they also listened to the community at large, and they stuck with it. And to me, that's pretty impressive because, again, when you're looking at the city, it's much easier to take the low road than the hard road sometimes. And they really stuck with it, and I'm proud that this is coming through today. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. No, we're not really, Jack Bolenbach.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today. I represent some environmental groups on Staten Island, particularly the Protectors of Pine Oak Woods. I'm a member, and we were involved with the meetings we had prior to COVID on the city planning on developing protection for the South Richmond project, the Hillside Preservation District. And we came up with a pretty good plan, and city planning, I have to applaud them. They did a great job on putting this all together. And what I'm here today is to emphasize a letter written by Cliff Hagan, president of Protectors of Pine Oak Woods, to maintain as many trees as possible, preserve the wetlands. I was just at a city council meeting 2 weeks ago where the desire was to protect and plant as many trees as possible. If we have vesting, what happens is the goals will be taken away. We want to protect wetlands and trees, particularly this site on Page Avenue. After what happened at Mount Marisa, which I think most of you are aware of, 15 acres of trees were destroyed, old-growth trees. We decided to look on Staten Island for unprotected properties, tree-covered natural areas. We found 110 sites, most of them on the South Shore, only a few north of the Staten Island Expressway. And what we found, one of the sites is on Page Avenue, where the ponds are, where there's a plans to build this project. If you look carefully at that site, you'll see ponds, wetlands, trees. We're not against development. There should be development, but it should be balanced. We volunteer. We're not here to make money. We're just here to help the community, to try to preserve as much woodlands as possible. But if you carefully look at Cliff Hagan's letter, he addresses the 1 acre sites, sites under 1 acre, and sites above it. So please read that letter that Cliff Hagan submitted. And just to let everybody know, there's St. John's University is for sale. There's some tree-covered property on that site. We were thinking about possibly the conservation easements to look at different sites, non-for-profit sites where there are trees, to try to protect them and allow the builder to build maybe a little higher, but try to preserve as much as possible, because if you go out, try to purchase trees, so it costs a lot of money. Why not protect what we have? Like a Serpentine Ridge on Staten Island, there's a 6.1 city-owned property that's tree covered. Let's try to get that protected. So we applaud city planning on what they came up with, but when vesting takes place, variances are created and then little pieces of property starts to decline. Over years, what used to be this much shrinks. So the goal is, I think everybody's in agreement, we want to protect as much trees, allow development, and try to come up with a good compromise. So as far as environmentalists, yeah, there was always opposition. I'm a member of Local 3, the Electricity Union. So there's always opposition, there's conflict, but we have to compromise.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate that. And I was wondering if you can help us understand what specific aspect of the proposed tree requirements are you concerned with?
Well, there's going to be opportunities for homeowners to take down some trees, but there's credits that are allotted. So we want to make sure that at least the tree cover, the canopy, most of it stays in place as best as we can. As far as the builders, when it comes to destroying, like Gateway Cathedral had 10 acres of woodlands totally destroyed by the Salvo brothers. So we like to see that not happen again. We like to see that some trees be preserved, building is allowed, and everybody works harmoniously together, and we have a viable community. If we have projects like in the past, like Mount Marisa, then you have total destruction. So we want to see a compromise. So we like to see as many trees, wetlands protected, and I hope the city planning sees that too, which they do. But we want to see the best result possible to make this all happen. So
thank you for clarifying that, and just to make sure that I fully understood what you said, you believe that the credit system may not be sufficient to address places where the density of trees is important?
Yeah, and near wetlands too. We want to make sure that it's reviewed very carefully and analyzed, and make sure that we protect as much as possible.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, just the question that I also asked Mr. Kelly. From your testimony, you would be opposed to any vesting or to any large-scale vesting. If the vesting was as described by Mr. Knoll, let's say that the project had to have been certified or ready for certification prior to the date when the zoning text was certified, would that be something? And you knew how many projects that related to?
Yeah, like that would be the Page Avenue site on Richmond Valley Road. So, yeah, when you actually go to that site, you'll see where the wetlands are located. We like to keep that protected. And if they're going to build, let them build in certain areas, if you look at the map of the site, so they don't destroy the environment, they don't destroy the wetlands, that we have a compromise. So, yeah, if the vesting has to take place, if it's going to be forced upon us, let's make sure that it's not going to be, widespread, that it's just overdevelopment. We don't want that, because it's very important to protect the wetlands. Once they're gone, wetlands, and when they're gone, it's very, very difficult to replace them. And if you look carefully at the Page Avenue, of the map of the site at Page Avenue, you'll see the benefits, that there are ponds and trees that are valuable. So, and they do connect, there is a culvert, they do connect to Mill Creek, which the DEP has a Bluebell project in that area. I used to work for the DEP,
So did
retired now, so,
Which relates to my next question, which is just, you believe that the replacement of the caliper system with the tree credit is enough to protect the trees?
Right, with the plans that we had come up with prior to COVID, before there was any modifications, that was the goal, the proper goal to go with. If there's going to be any changes, at least keep it within a range where we're not destroying a lot of what we have. I think that for any kind of settlement, there's always compromise. We know that. So at least just try to look at the environment, look at what we have, look at sites, tree-covered sites around Staten Island that the city owns, won't cost the taxpayer any money. Let's try to protect that, and let's work with the builders together. And that's why this the plans that we had prior to COVID, where we all met together, was very good. We were able to sit down together, work out things, and it was a good way of going.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Want to call the next one?
Vice Chair, I'll just note the record will remain open through Monday, July 10th at 5 p.m. to receive written comments on the draft environmental impact statement, DEIS.
Thank you. And this hearing is closed. Thank you.
Thank you. Borough Brooklyn, calendar number 32, CD4, N230353, HKK, public hearing in the matter of a communication from the Landmarks Preservation Commission regarding a designation report concerning the Linden Street Historic District. And I'll note we have no registered speakers on this item.
We do not?
We do not.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I don't think I was done.
We can call the next one.
Okay. So if there's no speakers on this item, we'll close the hearing.
Sure.
And call the next item.
Borough Brooklyn, calendar numbers 33 and 34. CD5, calendar number 33, C230117ZMK. Calendar number 34, N230118ZRK. Public hearing in the matter of an application for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 1233 57th Street rezoning.
Okay, this will be a 10-minute presentation by the team, which is led by Richard Lobel. Proceed.
Thank you, Vice Chair Knuckles. Good morning, Richard Lobel, Sheldon Lobel, PC, for the 1233 57th Street rezoning. I'm joined by Nick Liberis, the project architect, as well as Max Stember Young from Langen Engineering. I will give a brief presentation with regards to the land use items around the proposal. Nick will discuss the architectural aspects of the proposal, and Max will briefly conclude with some of the environmental discussion. So this is a rezoning for lots along 57th Street between 12th and 13th Avenues in Brooklyn from an existing R5 zoning district to an R6A zoning district. This would facilitate at this site a 5-story plus cellar and subcellar residential building with roughly 79,000 square feet of floor area. This would allow for 46 dwelling units at 1233 57th Street. This would also allow for, as per item 2, zoning text amendment to MIH, which would create at this site 12 affordable units in conjunction with the 46 total units at the site. This is particularly meaningful in this area as MIH has not really produced much in the way of affordable housing within the local community board, which is, I believe, one of the benefits of the proposal. The numbers with regards to the development are as follows. We include both the certified numbers on the left as well as what's been proposed pursuant to reduction in height. I will just leave you with the proposed development as an 8-story building with the same FAR and a greater number of units. In accordance with community discussion with stakeholders, we, in essence, reduced the height of the building by 3 stories to provide the same square footage, but larger units, a better ratio, or at least a robust ratio with regards to parking, and importantly, a building which ranges from 4 stories to the west along the lower residential buildings to 5 stories. This is well within the context of the area and this block, which includes 8-story buildings pursuant to the adjacent R6 district. You will also note that the bedroom units with regards to the breakdown includes 38 3-bedrooms, 4 4-bedrooms, and 2 5-bedroom units. This results in roughly 44 of the 46 units being at 3 bedrooms or greater, which is sensitive to the needs of the local area. The next slide is the zoning map. So the zoning map, I think, really demonstrates, along with the area map, why we think this is appropriate here. You'll note that to the north of this property and these blocks is an R6 zoning district, which includes greater than 100 blocks of non-contextual R6 zoning. where floor area ratios, as the Commission is aware, can rise to 4.8 FAR inclusive of community facility uses. So the project here, currently in an R5, has R6 on the block towards the eastern portion of the block. It is adjacent to 12th and 13th Avenues, both wide streets, both well accessible to transit. The red highlighted area here is the development site, roughly 22,000 square feet. And here's the area map, which really demonstrates why this is an appropriate rezoning here. You can see how well the site is accessed by transportation. The D line sitting 2 blocks away from the site. As Commissioner Garodnick noted in the introduction, this is an excellent example of transit-oriented development. You rarely have an opportunity in this area where you would have sites amounting to greater than 20,000 square feet and a real opportunity to provide larger units inclusive of affordable units. As the Commission is also aware, and importantly, the ratio of the affordable units in the building will mirror the ratio of the units generally in the building. So this would allow for larger 3, 4, and 5 bedroom units to be devoted to mandatory inclusionary housing. We feel this is a great benefit of the project. I would now introduce Nick Liberis, who will talk briefly about the surrounding area and the project architecture. Nick?
All right, thank you, Rich. Thank you all for your time. So on this first page over here, you can see the context photos for the site, and on this one that's to the bottom left, you can see something which is closer to 13th Avenue, which exceeds 90 feet in height. And you can also see that there's a bunch of single-family homes that are basically at the scale of like a 50-foot building, because that's what they are. So this is on 57th Street, looking south and also to the west, and you can see that there's a lot of these single-family homes, some of them detached, and these are very large homes. You know, stuff for the street wall is about 35 feet, pretty consistently. And if you were to go to Google Earth, you could see that the bulkheads often peak at about 52 feet. So this is also something that's on the street. So this is what's right next door to the site, this one that's at the bottom left, and this is about 35 feet to that eave. This is actually a peaked roof. So the top of the peaked roof is about 40 odd feet, let's say 40, 41 feet. And let's get into the presentation. So what Rich said is exactly correct. It's quite dense over here. There's a lot of the R6, and we are very, very close to this train stop over here. So this is the reduced proposal. So what we had come in with originally was something which was eight floors high, but we actually went down to 2 floors on the far west side. And what the R6A let us do was something that's even more sensitive than what you see here, because we had this transitional effect where we would step up, like half a floor, half a floor, half a floor. And you end up with a building which which feels very, very, I would say, unoppressive on the street. And there was a lot of outdoor space. And this is something that we're always trying to do for these communities. We've done, I would say, very, very many units at this point. So for this community, and what we're always trying to do is give them outdoor space that has space for the sukkahs. And this was something which was roundly rejected. We've come back with this, which is much more humble. So in the subcellar, we have 52 parking spaces. What this forced us to do when we went down to the 5 floors was that we had to put stuff into the cellar. So we have adequate adjacent space over here so that we can get light and air. And this is where the largest units are featured over here. So you have the 5 beds at the 2 ends, and then you have the 4 beds that are there in the center. So the ground floor, you can see that these massive units kind of extend front and back. And you have an entry for the car, which is all the way to the east side of the site there, and this is how we've addressed traffic on site. So you have the cars coming in from the east side, and then they would come down all the way to the subcellar, and then when they exit, they would go back up. So we think that this is a crafty way to kind of deal with any kind of traffic and how it might impact the site. The typical floors up above, you have these back and forth three beds. This is a very desirable unit type. People always want to see their kids when they're coming back from school, so they'll be at the front, and also they want to watch the kids in the back. So this is something that we can do with these types of layouts. This is the reduced height over here. We have 25 feet that we have to remain distant from the side R5 at the west, and we have to set back also 8 feet for that side yard. And you can see here, we have something which is very humble. It's quite low. And with that, I will pass it off to Max.
Hi there, Max Stember-Young with Langen Engineering. We prepared the environmental assessment statement on behalf of the applicant for this project. I just want to note that we took a conservative approach to the environmental assessment statement for this project. We note that the applicant is proposing large unit sizes to accommodate that and to analyze worst case condition. We looked at up to 94 units on the development site. We also looked at the adjacent site as a development site that could potentially be developed with up to 22 units for a total of 118 units analyzed in the environmental assessment statement. The EAS was issued a negative declaration back in February, and that included E-designations for hazardous materials, air quality, and noise.
So in closing, we would just note that this R5 district would permit a 2 FAR floor area ratio for community facility development. On a 22,000 square foot site, that would allow for a 44,000 square foot medical office building at 5 stories, which is actually what's proposed for the proposed R6A residential development. It would also allow for what would amount to be thousands of vehicular trips on a weekly basis, which would add traffic to the area as well. So in conclusion, pursuant to the environmental and architectural aspects of the building, we think that this rezoning as proposed is completely appropriate for the area. And with that, the applicant team is happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lobel. There are questions, but let me just start. What has been the reaction of the community to your second modified proposal?
So it's been negative. And Brooklyn Community Board 12 is a community board. I've presented dozens of applications before this community board over the last 20 years. So this was a particularly challenging discussion. And so much of the discussion at the community board was around height and density. While we do a lot of work in Brooklyn and we do a lot of work with rezonings, the local area felt particularly here that this would be disruptive to the local context. And so when we came with the proposal, particularly the revised proposal, there was an attempt to discuss sensitivity to allowing for density, which would respect local households, to basically demonstrate that what we wanted to do here was something which wasn't operating outside of the community, but within the community. Our developer, our applicant, was purposefully proposing larger units, of reduced height. But regardless of that, it was, the community board did not approve the application, and we continued discussions with them, but were unable to come to an agreement. We do note that the Brooklyn Borough President did approve the application at R6A.
Thank you. Commissioner Benjamin, did you have a question?
No, I was just holding my hand.
Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask you about a couple questions about the recommendations that the Borough President is making. But before we go to that, I wanted to ask if you can further explain sort of your rationale to reduce the height. I understand that you're accommodating the same amount of development in a lower building. But before I even ask the question, I wanted to say that the original design, that I appreciate the way in which the facade and how carefully you were treating the bulk to reduce the impact of it. I thought that was interesting, and I see that some of that is still maintained in the current proposal. I just wanted to note that. But I guess the first question that I had is then in terms of the density. So I read the EAS, and I read the results, there was one thing that I found really interesting, which was that even in the worst case scenario, you were finding that the impact on the reduction of the amount of open space per capita wasn't significant, which I thought it was interesting. You did note that there would be a reduction, but it wasn't significant. In sort of, really honoring the concerns about the density that the community board has expressed, I'm wondering if you can share with us a little bit, why did you decide to reduce the height? Whether you think that that's the appropriate, or whether you still believe that the larger sort of building still fits in there. I just want to understand a little bit sort of like the results of your own thinking in terms of what's the appropriate density and height for this neighborhood.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think I would introduce Nick to discuss some of the aspects with regards to height and density.
Yeah, sure. So we always have to be respectful of what the community wants, right? So I think in this case, it was more just a negotiating thing, because we thought that it would be something that would be more palatable. But ultimately, we think that the other building is probably the best one out of everyone that we've done on this site, just because you could really maximize the efficiency. You can get some extra units, and it's not intrusive. And then when you factor in that you have all these like cascading terraces, you end up with all this outdoor space, like you said. And I think like if you consider the de facto use of this space, were it like a single family home, like versus all these people living there with access to all these terraces, I think that there's an argument to be made that you're actually increasing the amount of open space, which would be actually like de facto available. So I think from like an urbanistic perspective, that's like probably the best way to go. That being said, I think this is fine for the site. You end up packing a lot in. The building becomes a lot more squat, becomes a lot more inefficient because you have extra depth. You're not able to take as many zoning deductions. So there's floor area that would be otherwise used that you can't use now. So that's more of like a technical perspective. I think Rich can speak probably to the politics a little bit more ably. So.
Well, I actually first want to just allow Max to talk about the open space.
So thank you for your question on the open space. The secret technical manual basically prescribes that we need to look at the open space ratio, which is a function of the acreage of open space available in an area and the population. So the fact here is the project is increasing the area's population. The site is, without increasing heights, it wouldn't be able to provide open space on the site, so there's no new increase in open space. So those two factors combined are decreasing the open space, and that is typical of most projects that we work on, that all projects do reduce the open space. In this instance, the impact threshold would be a 1% decrease in that open space ratio. Our analysis found that even on the worst case conditions, that the impact would be less than 1%, and in fact would be 0.54%, so around 55% or so of the impact threshold. So that was our finding of the EAS under worst case conditions.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I think it's worth just highlighting what you said, that even though under a worst case scenario, the impact would have been significant, you've now reduced that from there. That this is just helpful to understand what is sort of like the appropriate density. So I appreciate your clarification. That's what you answered my question. Now I wanted to ask you a little bit about, one quick follow-up question on the sort of like uses of the rooftops or the terraces that you're talking about. The renderings don't show much of that. I mean, there's a rendering where you can see people, but there's no sort of, I want to give you an opportunity to help us understand how would that work, who would have access to it, et cetera.
Sure. So within these buildings, typically there's a large demand for this outdoor space for the yearly festival, Sukkot. So people each have their own little space out there that they could put a sukkah up on. So typically what we see happening is that they'll have like subdivisions up there, and like during the times of the year where they're not being used, kids can go up there and hang out. It's outdoor space which is accessible to the residents. So. It's not publicly accessed, by people from the street, but it's for the building. So.
Gotcha. And how does that sort of connect with your plan to comply with 92 and 94 in terms of like green roofs and solar and et cetera?
It helps. I mean, it feels like the green roof. that requirement.
But do you have a plan, something that we could see that explains or shows us how you're thinking about that?
Well, we haven't gotten to that point yet with this project, and it was actually stalled, when we started to get so much pushback from the community. So, should we continue that would be part of the next steps. But typically, what we do for all these residential buildings, we do lots of passive house buildings. We do a lot of geothermal now, and for these things, we're always there's always outdoor terrace space, and it's always local 94 green roof stuff. So.
Well, thank you for that, and I do encourage you to, if you've done any thinking on this particular project, to submit that. I think that would help clarify.
Yeah. Okay.
So how you're thinking about it.
Sure.
And then just in general, if I have time for one just quick follow up, thank you. I was wondering if you can share a little bit sort of your response to some of the recommendations made by the borough president. I think that there was a recommendation there was explicitly for the Department of City Planning in terms of the neighborhood-wide analysis, but in terms of the potential opportunity to explore 100% full housing with HPD. I'm wondering if you can share your initial response on that. And I don't know if you've actually started a conversation with them, but just generally, I would be curious to hear what you think.
Sure. So thank you for the question. The borough president actually had three recommendations, which was one, that the applicant enter into a binding agreement with regards to the height and density of the building. The second, that we identify an experienced MIH administrative agent, which would be done as a matter of course pursuant to zoning. And then the third was a discussion with HPD. I'll discuss the HPD question first. I don't think that the applicant is against that opportunity, and we have not had any HPD conversations. And while we come to the commission with many buildings which are 100% affordable, indeed, the last application you saw me for was a 100% affordable and supportive building. As a practical matter, I don't think that this would necessarily be one. I think that the applicant was looking to not to receive any subsidies and to provide for inclusionary housing pursuant to zoning. Having said that, we always want to keep the door open, and we would engage in those conversations. But to be frank, I don't think it would necessarily be 100% affordable, but we would engage in those conversations without a doubt. The other questions I think are equally interesting, particularly with regards to a binding agreement with the community. As a practitioner who comes before the commission repeatedly, years ago or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this was not a common occurrence where we would be leaving the commission and immediately going into negotiations for community benefits agreements or restrictive declarations. And now it has become a matter of course. And so the applicant here, is part of their discussion process with the community, because various communities are sensitive to different issues. This one is sensitive particularly to height and density on these mid-blocks. The applicant is indeed discussed openly at the community board the opportunity and the willingness to enter into a community benefits agreement, selecting a local nonprofit as an administering agent for that agreement, and to cap height and density. So while we understand it's beyond the commission's purview, because the commission is improving a rezoning and looking for land use rationale to support that, we do note that here, that is a condition of the Brooklyn Borough President that we would indeed be happy to comply with in the interest of coming to some kind of agreement.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Thank you, and thank you for that presentation. I had three questions. One, in terms of the open space and the fact that there would be private open space, in the way back days of seeker, you could count the private open space for approximately 50% of the value of public open space. If you were to do that, is there any reduction in the open space ratio?
We haven't done that specific analysis, but I don't think that it would clear out of a reduction. I mean, generally all projects we see have some reduction in the open space ratio.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of, you brought up the topic of the roof being used for Sukkot. Mm-hmm. For the affordable housing, will they also have, whether they celebrate Sukkot or not, will they also have access to some plot for themselves?
Yeah. There's always some sort of common area there too.
Well, will there be private open spaces for the market rate people and some group open space?
There'll be both. Yeah. So there'll be private stuff which is available to everybody, which will be market rate and also affordable. And, okay. And then there's usually open spaces around the elevators where there's some sort of common gathering area.
That's very helpful. And my last question was about the the restrictive declaration. And would Richard, would the restrictive declaration be on you as the property owner, or also on, I know this isn't a land use issue,
Sure.
on all future owners of the property?
So as a matter of public record, with regards to the community benefits agreements that we have entered into, and as would be proposed here, there would be a nonprofit administering agent who would administer the agreement and ensure that the developer met their commitments. It would be recorded, there'd be a memorandum of agreement recorded against the property. And as has been proposed in most of these agreements, there must be an explicit adoption of the terms of the agreement by subsequent owners of the property. So it would, in essence, bind future owners to the terms of the agreement.
Thank you very much, although I do appreciate the recognition that we have nothing to do with those agreements.
Understood, Commissioner President. Thank you.
Other questions for this team? Being none, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Commissioners.
Any other testimony on this, Madam Secretary? No, Vice Chair. Okay. If there is not, we will close the hearing. Madam Secretary, do we have any other further business before the commission today?
No, Vice Chair. There is no other business before the commission, but I do have some public information to share. For those of you who are unable to or did not wish to testify, you can submit written testimony online by selecting this hearing on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal, through DCP's website, or by mailing your comments to City Planning Commission Calendar Information Office, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271.
All righty. There being no other further business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Great meeting.
Thank you. Time is 12:09 p.m.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.